the page and the Gambia's Vision 2020. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, advocate for gender-responsive budgeting and the allocation of adequate resources and public expenditure for all sectoral programs is critical for the achievement of the goals and objectives of the Gender and Women Empowerment Policy 2010 to 2020. Gender-responsive budget work is about ensuring that government budgets and related policies and programs address the needs and interests of individuals that belong to different social groups. Thus, GRB looks at biases that can arise because a person is male or female, and at the same time considers disadvantage suffered as a result of ethnicity, class, poverty status, geographical location, and age. The fact that GRB is intended to promote mainstreaming of gender perspectives in all policies and programs. To achieve this, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the Ministry of Finance must champion this cause, supported by the Ministry of Women's Affairs. Of course, other line ministries also have responsibilities in relation to their own planning and budgeting processes. The Gender and Women Empowerment Policy, ladies and gentlemen, emphasizes the importance for advocating for law reforms and the enactment of gender-responsive legislation in the Gambia. And I wish to therefore call on all the participants to give maximum attention to the issues that are to be discussed, as it will contribute immensely to the development process.
Madam Bayo also said the gap between female household holders and men should be narrow, particularly a number of issues touched on that are of essential to the work of gender-responsive budget, adding that the validation comes at a time when gender-related issues contest of the MDGs and Vision 2020. Bintu Gassama of Women's Bureau, who deputized the Permanent Secretary, Office of the Vice President and Minister of Women's Affairs, said the pronouncement by government to curtail non-priority expenditure to ensure that the key programs aimed at poverty reduction and employment creation are given due priority in a serious step in the right direction.
The government of the Gambia recognizes the importance of macroeconomic policy in shaping women's living standard and their prospects for economic empowerment. Gender budgets are a powerful tool in achieving development objectives, as they reflect gender commitments and can contribute to achieving the objectives of gender equality, human development, and economic efficiency. Madam Chairperson, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the draft assessment report that we are about to validate also examines how budgetary processes take into consideration the critical concerns of women and men, as well as issues regarding resource allocation and government spending in the national budget, among others. It also looks at gender-responsive budgeting in relation to the current policy environment, institutional arrangement and planning, budget processes, the stakeholders, and how they can build on a synergy to ensure that GRB, that is gender-responsive budgeting, is mainstreamed in the budgetary process. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chairperson, the importance of gender-responsive budgeting cannot be overemphasized. This is because to make any program relevant, it has to be linked to a budget. The present realities of the impact of macroeconomic policies on women and men are not quite enough to determine the gender responsiveness of the current budgetary system. Macroeconomic policies can worsen or improve the lives of women and contribute to narrowing or widening gender gaps in income, health, education, and nutrition. It is therefore important for this assessment to take place in order to take stock of the operating environment of the economy, poverty, and gender issues in order to assist in designing an informed GRB program for the Gambia. The final assessment report will ensure that gender equality concerns are mainstreamed into policies, projects, and programs, as well as the national budget. It is important to transform from the traditional budgeting system of resource allocation to a more comprehensive performance and results-based budgeting, including a gender dimension. To do this, we must ask the questions: who gets what and who has to deliver what for public management? To make gender-responsive budgeting relevant, it needs to be mainstream in our policy programs and laws, such as the PAGE, which is the Gambia government's blueprint, development blueprint, as a comprehensive budget reform package that can be adopted by the National Assembly. Madam Chairperson, ladies and gentlemen, for GRB to really work, it is important that gender concerns are incorporated in every sector's programs and budget. Therefore, there is need for each ministry or sector to have at least one or more of their sector or sector program objectives to be gender budget objective, or otherwise all objectives have a gender dimension with outputs that are gender responsive. The support of all stakeholders is therefore required for the successful implementation of this initiative. I therefore urge all of us to critically examine this document and make relevant inputs in order to produce an authentic report, including actions for the implementation of GRB in the Gambia. I wish to reassure you of the commitment of the Ministry of Women's Affairs and the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs for the implementation of gender-responsive budgeting.
Gassama further added that there is a need for symbiotic effort from all stakeholders to ensure successful implementation of the gender-responsive budget. During her presentation, Dr. Siga Jan revealed that the gap between the rural poor and urban poor needs to be bridged as poverty levels are more inherent in urban areas. The synergy for various stakeholders aim at disseminating effectively an efficient gender-responsive assessment report that will make a difference in the lives of all women and girls. And with that, we now come to the end of tonight's edition of the program. Until then, have a pleasant evening. Bye-bye.
I wonder what the current exchange rates are.
Wonder no more? QCell introduces the Q Currency service. Q Currency gives you the latest exchange rates of currencies from around the world by SMS.